The salt water burned Marcus's lungs as he dragged the limp body toward the shore, his worn sneakers scraping against the rocky beach of Malibu. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from exertion, but from the suffocating terror that he might be too late. He'd seen her go under twice now, and both times he thought he'd lost her forever. Marcus wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be back in Richmond, Virginia, working his second shift at the warehouse, saving every penny toward maybe, just maybe, getting a GED. Instead, he'd taken the risk. He'd cashed in his meager savings and bought a one-way ticket to California, with a vague dream of finding work and sending money home to his ailing mother. He'd been in Malibu for exactly 3 days. He wasn't a hero. He was just a 23-year-old kid with calloused hands, a faded hoodie, and the kind of desperation that comes from poverty. He'd walked to this beach because it was free, because he needed to think, because the weight of his failures back home had become too much to carry. The girl's name was Victoria, though Marcus didn't know that yet. He only knew that her eyes had been open when he pulled her onto the sand, and that was enough. Victoria Ashford came from the kind of money that doesn't advertise itself. Her great-grandmother had made shrewd investments in oil and real estate. Her father had multiplied the family fortune with tech ventures. Her mother had raised her with every advantage: private schools, world travel, personal trainers, and the insulating bubble of privilege that made it difficult to see the real world. She was beautiful in the way that expensive everything makes you beautiful. Perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect clothes. But beauty, as it turned out, didn't teach you how to swim. She'd snuck away from her father's Malibu estate that afternoon against his wishes. She wanted to feel alive, to rebel against the suffocating control of her upbringing. She'd waded into the water with the careless confidence of someone who'd never truly experienced real consequences. A sudden riptide caught her. The ocean, indifferent to her bank account, pulled her under. Marcus didn't know any of this when he saw her struggling. He didn't think about her circumstances. He simply saw a human being drowning and moved. His body acted before. His mind could catalog reasons. Not to get involved, he had no phone to call 911. No identification that would make authorities trust him. No reason to believe that helping would lead to anything but complications. But he did it anyway. When Victoria's eyes opened on that beach, coughing and gasping, Marcus was already standing over her, drenched and shaking. His first instinct wasn't to wait for thanks. It was to leave. He knew how this looked. A poor kid with no fixed address, no money, soaking wet and alone with an unconscious girl on a beach owned by the wealthy. He'd seen enough to know that his story wouldn't be believed. He was walking away when Victoria's father arrived, his security team flanking him. They'd been tracking her location through her phone. What they saw was a disheveled stranger retreating from their daughter's prone body. It took Victoria's weak voice, her outstretched hand calling out, "Wait! Please wait!" That made them pause. The next 72 hours were a blur. Medical examinations, police interviews, Marcus's background check, which revealed nothing but a clean record and a GED-less transcript. Victoria's recovery, which was steady and complete. And then something shifted. Victoria asked to see him. Not her lawyers, not her advisors, not her concerned friends from her exclusive social circle. She asked for Marcus. He sat in a hospital room that probably cost more than his mother's house per night. Victoria looked fragile in the white bed, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "I've been asking about you," she said. "My father wanted to give you a reward. He assumed that's why you'd saved me. I told him to wait, that I wanted to talk to you first." Marcus felt the familiar weight of his inadequacy settle on his shoulders. "I don't want anything," he said quietly. "I just did what anyone would do." Victoria smiled. A real smile, not the polished one she wore at fundraisers. "That's exactly why I want to help you," she said. "Because not just anyone does it. Most people would have walked away." She told him about her life then, and he listened. She described the hollowness of privilege, the suffocation of expectations, the loneliness of never knowing if people loved you or loved your family name. She asked about his life, and he told her. He didn't minimize his struggles or inflate his accomplishments. He talked about his mother's illness, his fears, his dream of stability that seemed to slip further away with each passing year. "What if I told you I want to sponsor your education?" Victoria said. "Not as a debt, not as repayment. as an investment in something I believe in, your character. Marcus felt his chest tighten. I can't accept that. Why not? Victoria asked. You saved my life without hesitation. You asked for nothing. You have nothing and you still showed up for me. That's worth something, Marcus. It's worth everything. What happened next wasn't a fairy tale with a tidy ending. Marcus didn't fall instantly in love with Victoria, and she didn't suddenly understand the world through his eyes. Instead, something slower and more profound developed. As Marcus attended college, paid for by Victoria's foundation, she'd created it just for him, turning his story into a vehicle for helping others in similar situations. They grew close. They learned each other's worlds. Victoria discovered that kindness wasn't just a virtue, it was a choice that required real sacrifice. Marcus learned that money couldn't protect you from heartbreak, but it could eliminate certain kinds of fear. 2 years later, when Marcus graduated with a degree in social work and a plan to help underprivileged communities, Victoria was there. When his mother's medical bills were paid and she moved out to California to live closer to her son, Victoria welcomed her like a daughter-in-law. When Marcus and Victoria eventually married, on a beach not far from where he'd first pulled her from the water, there were no elaborate displays of wealth. There were just two people who understood that the greatest fortune in life wasn't measured in dollars. The story might have been unremarkable if it had ended there. Another rich girl meets poor boy tale. But Victoria did something more. She created the Ashford Marcus Foundation, funding vocational training and education programs for low-income Americans across 12 states. Marcus became its director. Together they helped hundreds of people who, like Marcus had been, were one opportunity away from changing their lives. Years later, when people asked Marcus about the day he saved Victoria, he'd correct them gently. She saved me, he'd say. I just pulled her from the water. She gave me a reason to believe I was worth saving. The real magic of their story wasn't that money solved everything. It was that kindness, when offered without expectation, creates ripples far wider than we can ever predict. Marcus hadn't known, that day on the beach, that he was changing his own life. He'd only known that someone needed help. And in a world that teaches us to look away, to protect ourselves, to calculate the cost of compassion, that simple choice, to act, to care, to put another person's life before our own, safety turned out to be the most valuable currency of all.